Welcome to the Disruptive Social Care Podcast with social care provocateur and social media queen Ayres and myself, Stuart Arnott, founder of Mindings, a service dedicated to bringing social media to the disconnected. In this fortnightly show, we aim to spread the word about what's going on in the world of disruptive social care, amplify the voices of people with great ideas that few people have ever heard about, and to help our communities connect and collaborate. Well, Shirley, hello.
Hi, Stuart.
Show number 3.
Indeed, yes, we're certainly getting there.
Now, I know a lot of people listen to the show. It's a podcast via the website. But a lot of people seem to be watching the webcam recording of the show on YouTube, which I just did as a bit of an experiment, just for a bit of fun. In fact, one listener, Angie Carter, who is at Carter Angie, said that we look like a resistance group sat round the table with this dim lighting that we have here.
I thought that was quite exciting.
I thought it was great because at the beginning of last week's show, I said it looks like we're about to start a game of poker.
Yeah.
But I like resistance group a lot better.
Yes, the question is, do we need more action shots?
Well, that would up the production values of the show, something that we'll certainly have to work on, but that's great. But the best thing probably about the video is that I got an email, and this is true, I got an email from my Australian fan club who said that I was the Richard Gere of the UK social service broadcasting.
I'm suitably impressed, Stuart.
So
wow.
am I. I'm not quite sure what they meant by that. I don't have grey hair, but I'm going to take that as a compliment. I'm certainly going to take that as a compliment, any that I can get.
I'm just thinking about some of the films that Richard Gere was in.
An Officer and a Gentleman?
That was one.
So, Shirley, what's been happening this week in the world of social care?
The big news, of course, was the publication of the much-delayed Caring for Our Future, Reforming Care and Support White Paper, described by the Health Secretary Andrew Lansley as a watershed moment in how we care for the vulnerable. Unfortunately, this was not how it was perceived by the care sector, because it failed to address the very important question about how adult care is going to be funded in the future.
That's a rather important bit to miss out.
Oh dear. Laudable aspirations for higher quality services which offer more choice, but completely disconnected from what they will cost, how they will be paid for, and where the money will come from. And of course, one of the most pressing policy challenges of our age is finding a fair and sustainable way of paying for the success of people living longer and actually celebrating it. Of course, the devil is in the detail, but real person-centred care and support requires good information about choices, the promotion of social innovation, and the adequate funding. And the Twitter stream, using the hashtag carewhitepaper, gave an indication of the feelings that the white paper was a lost opportunity.
That was trending.
It certainly was. We were all at it last week. You know, put simply, at the moment, there isn't enough money to meet the demand for care for adults. Councils responsible for providing social care are experiencing really serious budget squeezes, which has led to the majority of them offering help only to those who need it most. And people who are classified as needing only low or moderate levels of care are actually being forced to pay for their own requirements. And I think the problem is that people don't understand that care is not funded in the same way as the health service. It is not free at the point of access, which is quite a shock for people. And Richard Humphreys from the King's Fund, commenting on the Care White Paper, said that it's a great vision with many good ideas, but funding indecision deeply disappointing. A financial vacuum at the heart of the proposals. And there's some very good links, resources and commentary provided on the King's Fund website.
And we'll put some of these links in the show notes.
Yes. However, some of the more interesting proposals include the one that every person with a care plan should have a named professional with responsibility for an overview and for answering all the questions that people have. Now, that's critical because people who are receiving care can actually have about 12 different people, organisations involved in delivering the care, and it's very complex. Another interesting proposal was about outsourcing care assessments. Not quite sure what that's about, and a focus on community development by helping to connect people into community networks, getting them involved in local activities, and creating community groups. Now, for me, one of the key issues about people having choice and control in care is ensuring that there is access to good information, advice and support in making pretty important care decisions. And I'm puzzled because there are actually a lot of organisations tasked with providing this information. So I think to avoid more duplication, we need to start asking users and carers what information they require and in what format. There's an excellent summary of Caring for Our Future from a social worker's perspective, which has been written by Ermintrude too. My other observation, alongside the white paper, is that there have been a lot of conferences and symposiums discussing the needs of older people in the last 2 weeks. An enormous amount of them. For example, the British Society of Gerontology annual conference had hundreds of papers exploring ageing, which included the use of technology to enable older people to live more independently. And I suppose for me, one of the questions for all researchers is how they are demonstrating the impact of their research on improving public services. It is a continuing debate about how much social policy and practice is influenced by a research evidence base. And the first international research conference on loneliness was organised by the Campaign to End Loneliness, and I followed it on Twitter using the hashtag #ResearchLoneliness. Worrying findings included the combination of old age and residence in deprived urban neighbourhoods increased the risks of feeling unsafe, dissatisfied and lonely. Over half of all people aged 75 and over live alone, and half of all people say that the television is their main company as they get older.
That's shocking. 51% over 75.
Yeah. So our vision to actually shine the light on innovation, I think, becomes even more important because there are ways of overcoming this. And obviously the government are taking this seriously because Paul Burstow announced the launch of the End Loneliness UK's digital toolkit for Health and Wellbeing Boards, which is intended to help the newly formed boards better understand, identify and commission interventions for the issue of loneliness in older age. I think we might need a separate podcast to help people understand what the Health and Wellbeing Boards do. And I was reading an interesting study from Australia which shows how social media can reduce isolation in the elderly and support new friendships.
Now, I saw that you were writing that up in a notes, and I just wanted to mention our friends at Global Community Resourcing in Australia. Not just because they compared to me to Richard Gere, but also because they're doing some very interesting work out there in Australia. They contacted us on these things through Twitter, and they saw what we were doing and said, we're based up in Queensland in northeast Australia, and what you do with Mindings seems to offer a low bandwidth, very simple solution for people who are living in communities pretty much in the outback of Australia, where a lot of people, young people, all leave to go to the cities and leave this generation of disconnected older people back home. And so we're going to be doing a little pilot. We've actually set up a server in Australia, and we're going to, over the next couple of months, run a little pilot out there using Mindings, connecting people in the outback of Australia.
How fascinating. Mindings goes international.
Yeah.
I would certainly say that Mindings has a value for all rural communities. And so I'll be interested to know what happens with the pilot. There are important debates, on a separate note, about the role and purpose of social work at the joint World Conference on Social Work and Social Development, which was held in Stockholm recently. And actually it was really interesting to follow the discussions around using social media for activism. I was reminded, actually, at the conference of a post that I wrote for Guardian's World Social Work Day about how social media helps make international connections. And finally, a mention for the recent local GovCamp, which is an unconference for people interested in improving public services, who all got together on a Saturday in their own time to share ideas, innovations, and try to make the world a better place.
Now, you're going to have to explain to me, what is an unconference?
I'll try in a sentence. An unconference means that the agenda gets decided on the day by those who attend. And there were some pretty diverse workshops, which ranged from open data, digital by default, social care, and local government blogging.
Okay, stuff. Well, we'll make sure that we'll put links to all of this in the show notes. If you go to the website at www.disruptivesocialcare.com, we put quite an extensive list of notes and links there for people to have a look at. Now, I can't help but bring up a story that was in the Daily Mail this week. Quote, thousands of civil servants will be told to use Facebook at work to find out what the public is thinking. Under plans branded totally mad by the Daily Mail, Sir Bob Kerslake, the new head of the civil service, has written to Whitehall chiefs, ordering to make sure staff can interact with the public in social networking websites. But the active consultation plans have been met with incredulity by senior officials who believe the move will simply encourage civil servants to spend time idly contacting their friends on Facebook. Well, I don't think that goes far, Shirley. Far enough. I think we should take telephones off civil servants too, because clearly they're just going to use all their time to phone their friends. And also we should take away the pens and papers to take away that temptation to spend all day writing letters and postcards to their friends, because clearly our civil servants have got nothing better to do. For goodness sake.
Yes, it is. Actually, Bob Kerslake is on Twitter. So we'll make sure we put his Twitter name down so that people can respond to him directly. Maybe we should we should have some crazy story from the newspapers every week about social media. Yes.
Well, actually, I've been sorting up on Facebook advertising this week, just as an aside, because we've just posted our first Facebook advert on Mindings, which was quite fun. Yeah, and actually, I thought it was fascinating. The granularity of the people that you can contact on Facebook is riveting. You can go down. So at the moment, we had to come up with this profile of who's going to be a Mindings user. And we reckon that she's a 35 to 50-year-old woman who has children, who lives away from home, who has a mobile phone, and we went down into such unbelievable detail, and you just see the number on there of like 55 million down to 20 million to 50 million to, a couple of several 100,000. I mean, you can even choose on there, I want this advert to be seen by people who have liked the Age UK Facebook page. The granularity is amazing. So if you're a social enterprise, if you're a group, if you're a charity or an organisation and you want to reach people who are of a like mind, Facebook really enables you to very tightly target. It's really absolutely fascinating.
I think it's certainly the way forward, targeted demographics. Although, of course, there's also the debate in Facebook about intrusions into people's privacy. So I think there's a careful balance with advertising on any social networking site. But I will be really interested to see what sort of response you get. Yeah,
that's good. And it's certainly, as I say, anybody who's a social enterprise there and they don't have a Facebook page, it's something they should have a look at.
Am I allowed to be impolite and ask, was it very expensive?
No, it's just going out this week, and we have, it was like £50 just to do that initial advert, and it's 12 pence per 1,000 views, or it was about 60 odd pence per click. Now, considering that is going down to, I've specified a very, very tight demographic of the exact person who's likely want to use the site, for them to pay 60 pence for that instead of us, I don't know any other kind of advertising that would enable us to laser sight, our audience. So we'll see how that works. And of course, we'll fine tune it. We'll go back. We'll see what the analytics are. We'll see what words worked and what their feedback is.
Certainly a cheaper alternative to Google AdWords.
Yeah, and I don't believe. We'll do that another time. But I'd be amazed if it could enable me to so tightly advertise that demographic.
Well done. And a warm welcome today to Murtz Abidi, who's the founder of Casserole Club. Casserole was born out of a desire to help bring communities together. There are a lot of people cooking food, and many others who would greatly appreciate a home-cooked meal. And the goal of Casserole is to connect the two. The reasons why people could use a meal are very varied, and Casserole are working both on and offline to make sure that even those who are not connected to the web can benefit from the Casserole community. And I think Casserole believes that the mix of online platform and offline engagement is a great way for local communities to tackle social isolation through shared food. Now, Casserole is a project by FutureGov, which is a social innovation and technology company that works with local government to develop better services for councils and their communities. And it's currently being developed and piloted with the support of Reigate and Banstead Council and Surrey County Council. But Can you tell us something about your background and what inspired you to start Casserole?
Sure, yeah. Well, before I was working at FutureGov, I was actually doing a master's in something called Integrated Product Design at Brunel University. And we did an exercise where we tried to dive into the future of public sector services and what design and technology and social innovation as a package can do to try and improve issues that are going to be arising in the future. And so I was really interested in what design could do in the public sector, in particular with things like ageing population, looking into things like loneliness and isolation. And we just had a very, very simple solution of trying to encourage more neighbours, more people in communities to be involved in social care in a very kind of informal way at the beginning, and hopefully from that we believed it would kind of develop into this longer term relationship which kind of really helps to tackle isolation. And so what we did, I actually came up with an idea called We Care, which was all about trying to encourage communities, trying to use technology and apps and really well thought out design to try and devise services which are really, really easy to get involved in, which tried to break down barriers. Because what we found was that a lot of people were saying that they didn't have time to be involved in these schemes. And so we started to look into, well, what time do you have? And a lot of people ended up having maybe 15 minutes a day. So so that they perceived that their time wasn't very much. And so we looked into meals because obviously like food, traditionally, culturally, is something that brings people together. It's just an amazing community activity. You look at all different kind of seasonal holidays, cultures, religions, they all kind of revolve around this meal. And we thought, what a great way to kind of connect people. And so from that was born the kind of casserole idea, which I proposed to FutureGov, and we ended up collaborating on to try and get some funding to actually develop the idea into a usable service with a kind of great experience to try and encourage more local people in the area. And the idea was really simple. Essentially, you just literally choose a time and date where you're cooking a meal and cook an extra portion, and that extra portion gets delivered to kind of a neighbour in your area who could really benefit from it. And so we went through a period of trialling this kind of idea in a very, very low technology stage. So we didn't want to rush and spend a lot of money designing something which we weren't 100% sure if it would work. So we tried a variation of different ways. Do we leave it very open? Do we make it very prescribed? Do we try and control everything, or do we leave it very open? And we found kind of a mixture of some element of control, but some element of letting people take control, and again I think it comes back to this idea of choice and control, of letting people kind of control their meals and control the time that they have to kind of help others in their neighbourhood, was the way that really worked for us. And so at the moment I'm at FutureGov, and we're trying to develop it alongside Surrey County Council. And where alongside each stage we're building another layer of technology or another layer of offline engagement that will really help our small community to grow and develop as their own casserole community.
I mean, it is such a lovely idea. I can see every community having a casserole available.
Hopefully, yeah.
maybe I'm slightly biased because I love my food. I love sharing it. That's the way.
But I think that's a very inherent feeling. I mean, I think food brings this kind of, I don't know of anyone who enjoys eating by themselves. I think it's always like an inherent thing about food, is that it brings people together, like, having a chat around the meal, whether it's a muffin and a coffee or a three-course dinner, it's something which is quite inherent in our nature as well. So I hope you're right, yeah.
But it's the visit as well. It's the person coming to your home, bearing
exactly,
gifts,
yes.
kind of thing. I mean, I can imagine that's possibly the only human being that some of these people might see that day, and it was just the joy of seeing them.
Definitely. I mean, we did a lot of work in the early stages where I actually followed around Meals on Wheels services in the area, and what I found was that a lot of the people using the services were quite satisfied with the kind of routine meal, but what wasn't happening so much is that actually that was the only person that they were meeting, and it would often be on the doorstep, a couple of minutes, and it would probably be the same person each week, week in, week out. And so what we were hoping is that, even if we made a very small incremental change where that person was suddenly a neighbour, they have a conversation point to start off with. We're not asking people to spend hours and hours at each other's homes eating together, but I think what we've learned is that slowly just by delivering a meal from a neighbour, you end up saying, oh, so, you know, where did you go to school? How long have you been in the area? And all these kind of connections start to spark off. And that's what's been really nice for us to see on the kind of more softer approach of what we do, is the kind of relationships that suddenly we find out that a couple of people have met up for tea on Sunday or something, you know, completely without us even knowing. You know, and to be kind of a part of that connection is really good. And I think that's what we've learned, and that's what we really are trying to develop Casserole to do even more so, is actually be this kind of catalyst and this agent to try and introduce people for the more longer term relationship.
Can I actually ask, what is the technology that's doing this? Have you got a website, or is it?
Yeah, we have. So we have a website called CasseroleClub.com, and the idea is really simple. We don't want anyone to be put off. We want literally someone to put in their postcode, a couple of details, and literally be able to get an indication of their area and their level of activity, and who's available to help and who's available to cook and eat. And we really wanted the online to kind of replace kind of what's been lost in a lot of these communities, because when we go around to Reigate and we speak to people who've been living there for a long time, you know, we always get the same message, which oh, you know, this isn't anything new. This we used to do this back in the day, and sure. As great as a lot of technology has been, sometimes it's viewed as being responsible of a breakdown of communications, and we don't fully believe that. We just think that there hasn't been anything available to kind of amalgamate that community relationship. And so one of the big things about Casserole is introducing very, very basic technology, location-based technology and apps which recognises where you are and potentially shows you who else is in your area. And the idea is that by doing that, we can rekindle those relationships which have sometimes been lost. You know, we have a lot of cases where neighbours don't even know they're next door neighbours, and then suddenly we have two people sign up who live literally 2 doors to each other and they don't even know. And you know, so I think that's a really big part of what we're trying to achieve.
I know that with we're in the National Childbirth Trust, and we joined. I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and the way that that connected us with, I mean, in particular, 4 families who live 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. One was round the corner of people who are having children at exactly the same time as us, who'd never have met them. And now, you know, best friends, sleepovers, it's just been the most phenomenal thing. So using new technology to connect people like that, like you say, people who are only a couple of doors down and you just don't know.
Exactly.
The difference you can make is phenomenal.
I must admit, one Christmas I actually had 3 Christmas meals because I went out with Meals on Wheels in the morning. Right. I then went to a social club that had organised a Christmas meal for many people in the community who had no one to go to and were alone. And then by the evening I was sitting down with my family. I'm afraid I was somewhat tired of Christmas dinners. But I think, you know, what you're proposing, it is reconnecting people in a very real way. And I think it is so essential. We believe so. I really love it. So I mean, you've actually learned quite a lot of lessons from the pilot so far.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's really interesting when we're, you know, our core ambition was to always keep this thing very lightweight, to keep it very easy to be involved with, because if you look at traditional volunteering models, sometimes people get very put off them. They perceive that they don't have enough time, or that there's so many processes and stages that you need to go through. So our aim was to always keep it very simple. But we also wanted it to be a very, very open model. And I think one of the really important things we learnt recently was that through the site, people could actually charge for their meals in terms of a reimbursement, because we know that, you know, I don't think everybody's going to be able to just cook an extra portion every week for someone, for example, without incurring some costs. So we thought, well, we'll introduce that just as a really kind of basic add-on. And immediately what we found out was that wasn't working, because when you mix kind of a social activity with financial kind of incentives, the message is very hard to portray. And so we kind of decided to remove that from the very first start, and now what we've invested more time in is this idea of actually pairing people up. So at the beginning we were just about trying to link up as many meals with as many people, and what we learnt was that along with the issues of money being involved and potentially being a detriment to that relationship, we found that actually in terms of what we're trying to achieve on a more softer approach, the more long-lasting emotional kind of relationships, which really do a lot to tackle isolation.
Sure.
It was more affected by linking people up who would routinely share something in the future. So what we decided to do was kind of redesign Casserole Club to be kind of a window opportunity into just to give people kind of an example of what it's like to be involved and demonstrate just how easy it is to make a huge amount of change with just a small plate. But then after that, hopefully the idea is that they've realised, okay, I can actually do this. It's not a lot of time. It probably takes me about 5-10 minutes extra, and hopefully we can try and create a pair up, which is our kind of new scheme, is actually pairing people up, because from the learnings we've kind of learned that that's the best way to tackle things like isolation. Is that the kind of ad hoc meals are great, but if that can lead on to a more kind of regular routine, that's kind of a really good thing. And if we can help facilitate that, that's kind of a really big thing we've learned.
I was thinking about things like special dietary requirements or nutrition or allergies or things like that. I suppose the pairing up, because that's developing a relationship, that would partly help that problem. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we've got some great stories of people who've even started to learn new recipes because the person that they're paired up with prefers fish or doesn't, or perhaps they're not a big meat eater or something. So it's really incredible. I think I think this is the story of the relationships, is that you're the level of things you do actually changes the more you know someone. So at the beginning, if you were to say, okay, I'm going to link you up with person X, and she doesn't eat meat, she doesn't eat fish, you've got to cook this, you've got to cook that, it's a very tough thing to look at all at once. But then slowly, gradually, as that relationship comes to kind of mature a little bit, you realise that actually there's small things you could change, and there's small things that could kind of influence your relationship, and it becomes a lot easier along the way.
Well, I hope you are connected with the campaign to end loneliness.
Yes, yeah.
And they are aware of you.
Good. I think we've been on Twitter with your help, I believe, as well.
Yes, connections, relationships. This is the Disruptive Social Care podcast, Bert. So I'd be interested in how you define disruption, and what do you think disruptive technology can contribute to social care?
I think, in its simplest form, I think I kind of view disruption as anything that changes the current norm of how services or systems work, and those things can be disrupted in a positive way or a negative way. And obviously, as a social innovator, as a designer, as a service kind of engineer, you want to always promote positive disruption and show people and potentially get a glimpse of another way of delivering a particular service in a much better way. And I think along disruptive technology, the thing that we're trying to do in Casserole is really use technology to rekindle that local community, because I think what technology has done great, if you look at things like Skype and Facebook, is connect you with people across the globe. The world actually has become a bit of a smaller place because of things like Facebook and Skype. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I think our real aim with Casserole is to rekindle those local community kind of relationships and use online technology to try and recreate those. And I think that's disruptive, because if you look at what people have at the moment, there is nothing that really gives them the opportunity to link up with neighbours in a very informal way. And so I think it's giving a glimpse of how to do something in a very different way, kind of for us, is disruptive technology, and using kind of advancements in technology. And it doesn't always have to be in the most advanced way. I mean,
Sure.
we try and do something very simple. I mean, I started out with a mobile phone and a Google map, and we were still able to connect people very easily through that.
Technology doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Please remember this, everyone. So, finally, what do you think, Murtz, is the biggest challenge in making social care services fit for the 21st century?
I think there's always going to be the challenges of funding, the amount of change that people are kind of ready for. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen is really changing people's attitudes and being really confident about the basic things that we can really change. And so I think by shaking things up and changing the way we do things, and really promoting a lot of promoting a lot of confidence and having these kind of key champions. I think often there's hundreds of great ideas, and actually taking a great idea from a pilot to a beta test to reality and actually scaling it up is the real big challenges. Because if you look into the social innovation, social enterprise kind of sphere, you have so many examples of amazing ideas which never really reach scalability, and often that's a really that's kind of an issue with people's confidence in how much they can scale it up. But it's also about building a support system which works and kind of having an environment and a climate which supports these kind of social enterprises and has real confidence about them. So I think changing attitudes and really helping scale in kind of having belief in those enterprises to actually affect change on a mass scale is probably one of the biggest challenges, I think.
Thanks very much, Murtz. We'll be putting up contact details on our Disruptive Social Care website, and I hope you're going to hang around and contribute to the rest of the session.
Definitely. Cheers.
Thank you.
This section of the programme is called Follow Friday because it's Friday that we release the show, but also because people who use Twitter use hashtag FF for Follow Friday to recommend people to their community. Shirley, who have you got that we should be following this week?
This week, I'm recommending Clark Mike, whose knowledge about telecare and telehealth developments in the UK and internationally is unsurpassed. Dominic Campbell, who's the founder and director of FutureGov that Murtz referred to earlier, who is a champion of digital design for social innovation and government. I'm recommending Mithran Samuel, who's the adults editor at Community Care, for his excellent reporting about the Care White Paper. And I'm recommending the Care Support Bill from the Department of Health, which is summarising caring for our future in tweets. And I wonder, is this the first for legislation on Twitter?
Excellent. Well, we'll be putting these links onto the show notes, but also Shirley and I will be giving them a Follow Friday shout out on Friday. So please feel free to retweet these for us. Now, website detail again is disruptivesocialcare.com, and our Facebook page is facebook.com/disruptivesocialcare. And you can follow me at mindingstew.
And you can follow me at SHIRLEY'S.
And if you do tweet about the show, and please do, and tell your communities about us, remember to use the hashtag DEUKCare. So Shirley, what do we have coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Well, after a very frantic few weeks, it seems that everybody is now slowing down for the summer holidays. And I'm going to take the time to look in more detail at the proposals in the Caring for Our Future White Paper, especially around improving how people access social care, information, advice and support, and care rating websites. So, and starting to plan the first hashtag Care Camp. More details to follow in due course.
I look forward to hearing more about that.
And you, Stuart, anything coming up?
Well, last week Helen Keegan mentioned the Vodafone Foundation Smart Accessibility Awards. So I thought I'd just give them another shout out because it's a contest to promote the development of IT applications that address accessibility issues, particularly for seniors or for people with disabilities. Last year, more than 100 people took part, Minding included. So it's been relaunched this year with 4 prizes of €50,000. And there's 4 categories. So there's social participation, independent living, mobility and wellbeing. It's supported and co-organised by Age Platform Europe, the European network of around 160 organisations for people aged 50 plus, and the European Disability Forum, EDF, who represent the interests of 80 million Europeans with disabilities. So if you're a developer, you have until the 15th of October to enter, or if you are involved in a care community or somebody who's interested in accessibility, team up with a developer and put in an entry. Big prizes to be won, and obviously with Vodafone supporting it, lots of publicity and promotion to follow.
Well, Murtz, have you got any Follow Fridays?
Apart from FutureGov, I have to say, which I'm very biased on. We have, I mean, I don't know how much this falls into your remit, but there's an app that FutureGov is developing called Patchwork, Patchwork HQ, and they kind of often find really, really interesting things. Apart from that, maybe I'll recommend some on Friday if you follow.
Please do. We'll watch with interest.
I'll tweet you guys.
And just as a sort of final thing, I am busy planning our Disruptive Social Care podcast interviews for the next few months. And we've certainly got more interesting people lined up, which includes Paul Hodgkin from Patient Opinion, who are due to launch Care Opinion in the next few months, and Andrea Sutcliffe, who's the Chief Executive at the Social Care Institute for Excellence.
And some other names that I've seen you tossing about that I'm really excited about. So hopefully we'll get them in as well. So lots to look out for.
Well, that's it from us this week. A big thank you to Murtz for coming into the studio and telling us about Casserole, and I look forward to hearing about future developments.
Thanks very much.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please help us spread the word.
Come and visit us at disruptivesocialcare.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/disruptivesocialcare. And Murtz, do you want to give us details for us to follow you at?
Yeah, there's so if you want to follow Casserole's progression, it's at Casserole Club on Twitter, and also you can follow our blog on casseroleclub.com.
Fantastic. Well, until next time.
Until next time. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Murtz.
Thanks, guys.
Bye to our Australian fans.
Bye.
And everyone else who watches the show on YouTube. Bye.